You get your first paycheck. You do the responsible thing. You open a savings account. You put in 50 bucks. And you feel like a financial genius for about 11 minutes. Then your car makes a weird noise. Or your friend's wedding is in Cabo. Or your phone screen cracks. And that 50 bucks is gone before it even had a chance to make a friend. Here's the thing nobody tells you. Saving your first $1,000 is, statistically, psychologically, and mathematically, the hardest money milestone you will ever hit in your entire life. Harder than saving your next $10,000. Harder in some ways than saving your first $100,000. And if you've been beating yourself up because you can't seem to keep four figures in your account without it evaporating, I need you to hear this. It's not you. It's the math. And more importantly, it's your brain. And both of them are working against you at exactly this stage. Let's start with a stat that should honestly be illegal to know, and then go back to your normal life. According to Bankrate's 2024 Annual Emergency Savings Survey, only 44% of Americans could cover a surprise $1,000 expense using savings alone. Less than half. The other majority would have to put it on a credit card, borrow from family, or just not pay it. Think about that. We're not talking about a $1,000 vacation. We're talking about a surprise, a busted transmission, an ER visit. $1,000 is the line between inconvenient and crisis for the majority of adults in this country. So why is this specific number, this specific first grand, such a brutal wall to climb over? Let me explain it with a metaphor, because the math alone doesn't capture what's actually happening to you emotionally. Picture pushing a car that's stalled out in the middle of an intersection. The first few inches are excruciating. Your legs are shaking. You're barely moving it. Cars are honking. You're sweating through your shirt. That's your first $1,000. But once that car gets rolling, once it hits maybe 10, 15 miles an hour, something changes. You're not fighting inertia anymore. You're just maintaining momentum. That's your next $10,000. Same car, same person pushing, wildly different amount of suffering. Here's why the first push is so much worse, and it comes down to three things stacked on top of each other like a bad Jenga tower. Number one, you have zero buffer, so every emergency is a savings account massacre. When you have $50 saved and your tire blows out, that's not a dent in your savings. That's your entire savings. Gone. In one afternoon. You start over. Again. And again. And again. Researchers at the Urban Institute have found that lower balance savers experience what's basically a hamster wheel effect. They save, get knocked back to zero by an emergency. Save again. Get knocked back again. And the psychological toll of that repeated failure is enormous. Compare that to someone with $10,000 saved. A $600 emergency to them is a rounding error, a blip. They don't even feel the ground shift. Same emergency, wildly different experience, because the first $1,000 has to serve as your entire emergency fund at the exact same time it's trying to grow. Number two, and this one's sneaky. Your first $1,000 has no compound interest working for it, but your discipline is being tested at its absolute weakest point. Let's do quick napkin math. If you're earning even a generous 5% in a high-yield savings account, $1,000 earns you $50 a year. $50. That's not motivating. That's not exciting. Compare that to someone with $50,000 saved. Same 5%. That's $2,500 a year, just sitting there, showing up like a little bonus paycheck for doing absolutely nothing. Here's the cruel part. The people who need motivation the most, the beginners, get the least reward for their effort. The people who already have momentum get rewarded more for doing nothing. That's not fair, but it's real. And understanding it is the first step to not quitting when the growth feels invisible. Number three, and honestly this is the big one, the one nobody puts in a headline. Your first $1,000 requires you to build a completely new identity, and your next $10,000 just requires you to maintain one. Behavioral economists call this identity-based habit formation, James Clear talks about it constantly in Atomic Habits. But here's the blunt version. Right now, if you don't have savings, you don't think of yourself as a person who saves money. You think of yourself as someone who's broke, or someone who spends what they make, or someone who's just not good with money. That identity is loud. It's been reinforced by every missed paycheck, every overdraft fee, every "I'll start next month." Getting to $1,000 isn't a math problem. It's an identity assassination. You are murdering the version of yourself that spends everything and building a new one from scratch, brick by brick, while the old version is still screaming at you to buy the thing. Once you cross that $1,000 line, though, you've already proven the new identity works. You've got receipts, literally. You know what it feels like to resist an impulse buy. You know what it feels like to watch a number go up instead of down. Getting to $11,000 from $10,000 doesn't require you to become a new person. It just requires you to keep being the person you already became. That's why it feels so much easier. It's not easier. You're just not fighting yourself anymore. Now look, I want to hit you with one more stat because I think it reframes everything. A survey from Joe Banking Rates found that a huge chunk of Americans, we're talking a significant plurality, have less than $1,000 in savings total, not emergency savings. Total savings. Everything they own in liquid cash. When you're in that group, and if you're watching this, there's a real chance you are. You are not the exception. You are the statistical majority of adults in the wealthiest country on earth. That's not an insult. That's actually really important information because it means the system, the paycheck-to-paycheck treadmill, the instant approval credit cards, the buy now, pay later button on every single checkout page, none of that is an accident. It is specifically engineered to keep you from ever accumulating that first buffer, because a person with zero savings is a person who has to say yes to overdraft fees, yes to payday loans, yes to 24% interest credit cards, because they have no alternative. Your empty savings account is, quite literally, somebody else's business model. Okay, so knowing all this, how do you actually win the fight? Because I'm not going to sit here for 13 minutes and just make you feel bad about your bank balance. That helps nobody. Let's get tactical. First, stop trying to save $1,000 all at once and start trying to save $1 1,000 times. I know that sounds like a dumb wordplay trick, but there's real psychology here. A $1,000 goal feels like climbing Everest. A $1 decision feels like nothing, because it is nothing. Behavioral economist Dan Ariely has written extensively about how breaking large financial goals into tiny, almost laughably small units dramatically increases follow-through, because your brain stops treating it as a sacrifice and starts treating it as a game. Round up every purchase to the nearest dollar and stash the difference. Skip exactly one takeout order a week and move that $20 over immediately, same day. Don't let it sit in checking where it'll get spent by accident. The goal isn't speed right now. The goal is proving to your brain over and over that saving is something you actually do, not something you talk about doing. Second, automate before you have willpower, because you will not have willpower. Nobody does. Willpower is a myth that fitness influencers made up to sell you supplements. Set up an automatic transfer of even $10 a week the day you get paid, before you see the money, before you can rationalize keeping it. A study published through the National Bureau of Economic Research found that automatic savings mechanisms, the ones that don't require an active decision every time, dramatically outperform manual saving in almost every income bracket. You are not more disciplined than automation. Nobody is. Stop trying to win a fight with your future self using nothing but good intentions. Rig the game before it starts. Third, and this is the one people skip because it feels backwards. Give your emergency fund a name and a job before you give it a number. Call it the fund that keeps me off a credit card. Every time you're tempted to rate it for something that isn't an actual emergency, you're not just spending money, you're firing your own bodyguard right when you need it most. People are far more likely to protect money that has a defined purpose than money that's just sitting in a generic account labeled savings. That's not superstition. That's mental accounting. It's a well-documented behavior, and it works in your favor here. Fourth, track the friction, not just the dollars. Every time you successfully resist an impulse purchase, write it down somewhere, even just a note on your phone. Resisted a $40 impulse buy today. Because remember what we said earlier, your first $1,000 is an identity war, not a math problem. An identity gets built through evidence. You need a running list of proof that you are, in fact, becoming a person who saves. That list becomes more motivating than the dollar amount itself, especially early on when the dollar amount is still embarrassingly small. And fifth, when you hit $1,000, stop and actually acknowledge it. Don't just glance at the number and immediately set a new goal. Sit with it for a second. You just did something less than half the country has managed to do. You pushed the stalled car through the hardest part of the intersection. Everything from here gets easier, not because the universe is being nice to you, but because you already built the machine. The next $10,000 isn't a bigger version of that fight. It's just you, running the machine you already built, a little longer. So here's what I want you to actually do after this video ends. Not eventually. Today. Open your banking app right now and set up one automatic transfer. Doesn't matter if it's $5 or $50 before you close this tab and let your brain talk you out of it. That's it. That's the whole move. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a spreadsheet. You need the first push on that stalled car. Because I promise you, the second push is so much easier than the first.